What's up, guys? Kelvin here, and I'm looking forward to delivering this knowledge transfer session today. Hoping that you guys find it useful. I know that when I first started automating, which wasn't very long ago, it's definitely helped me along my way. So we're just going to give it a few minutes and let people start joining, and then we'll kick off this today's session, the knowledge transfer session. Make sure that you subscribe if you've not subscribed already. Follow me on Twitter. All the links are there. You can subscribe to the blog synac.co.uk and retweet on Twitter or send it out to your friends, those that might be interested as well. So just give it a few minutes and then I'll start. Again, I'll just give it a few more minutes and then we'll start. Welcome to those that are just joining. I'm just going to give it a few more minutes and let some people join. Just a few more minutes and we'll be starting. Okay, cool. I'm gonna make a start now. I appreciate that some of those across the seas in the US or wherever they are, apart from the UK, may not be able to catch the live stream due to different time zones, but I'll start anyway and you guys can catch up whether you join later or if you just watch the replay. So today's video, our knowledge transfer session, is going to focus on automation, and we're going to be using Ansible to do this. Now the reason I've picked this topic is because I tend to get quite a lot of questions surrounding the topic of automation, and our network engineers going to need to understand and be able to use automation and code, etc. And you know, it's becoming more and more frequent now, especially from what I'm seeing, and I've also started to learn this as well, and it's very useful and can save you a lot of time. So that's kind of the main purpose of automation, making things easier and you know, allowing you to be more productive with your time elsewhere. So basically this session is getting started with Ansible and, you know, automation, and you know, by no means am I, you know, fully souped up with the coding practices, etc. And you know, when you're looking at Python and you know, different languages, but you know, I do know enough to make sure or make what I need to do work. So what I've learned so far is what I want to show you guys today. So that's what we're going to be going through. So it's quite action packed. We're going to begin, and if you're following along, you can see there that there's a few prerequisites, and that is you need an host machine that's capable of having Ansible and Python packages installed. GitHub account is optional, but I do recommend it, and you know, especially if you're going to be using this for the long run. And a text editor that can recognize different languages. So we're going to start now with the setup configuration. And again, if you're watching on and you wanted to follow this is probably going to be ideal for you. So I've actually already got a machine that's been set up. I'll just show you that machine quickly. So I've already got an Ubuntu machine that's already been set up. However, we can run through some of the configurations here just to show you the sort of thing. Let me just put that on mute there so it's not making all that noise in the background. There we go. So yeah, as I was saying, we can run through these commands, these configuration steps, and hopefully it can help you get set up as well. So you can see that we're going to upgrade the host. So in my case, we're using Ubuntu, and for many of you guys, you might actually be using Ubuntu as well. And then we're going to install Ansible and Python packages, and then we're going to verify the versions of Python and Ansible. The language, in some respect, for Python changes in the newer versions of Python, but not noticeably enough. So you should be okay with whatever version you're using. And you know, that goes to say as well, if you're not familiar with using Python or any other language, then you know, it's probably recommended that you look these up and get some knowledge behind you with these languages as well. So then after that, we can upgrade Ansible, which is optional, and then we're going to generate public-private key pairs for Git and SSH sessions. And I've just kind of put in bold there, which hopefully you all know, you never share your private key or the location. Okay, so the reason you generate public-private keys, RSA keys, is Ansible works with SSH. So what it does is it will SSH to your host and it'll run the playbooks, or in our case, if you wanna talk about configurations, it'll run the configurations. You can choose to run the playbooks locally, which is what I'll be doing today, just to kind of show you how Ansible works with the playbooks, etc., and how we can automate configurations. So we will be running it locally. However, if you're using a GitHub account, you also need your public key to be stored within your repository settings on GitHub. We can take a look at that as well, and the reason being for that is so that we can pull and push files from our repository. So that's the main it's the main reason why you need those keys as well. So I've put there as well that we can install Git and verify its status. Again, like I say, it's optional. Today we will be running the configuration locally, but I have got a Git account set up so I could hopefully show you how we can pull and push and clone our repositories as and when needed and make changes, etc. And yeah, again, like I said, with the adding the public key to the Git repository, if you're going to be using Git, then you need to do that. So I've put a link to the Ansible document, which is gives you an introduction on installing Ansible. It's pretty much these steps, depending on what you're trying to install. So it's recommended that you check out all the Ansible documentation. They've got a lot of good documentation online. So before we jump into any labbing, we'll just have a quick brief overview of Ansible. And I recommend that you take a look at the latest intro in getting started. It gives you a good breakdown of what Ansible is and the purpose of it, etc. So follow that link or just go to ansible.com and you should be able to find it. In regards to how Ansible works, I've tried to break it down to make it as simple as possible. And to do this and to make Ansible work, we have 3 different file types. So we've got something called the inventory, which is where your host variables are stored, or your vars, and these are created using YAML or ini. And then we have your actual playbooks that you run to actually against your templates, and these are created using YAML as well. And then you have your templating files, and these are created using Ginger 2. And your Ginger 2 templates can leverage Python data types and functions, which is really good because that means you can use everything you've learned, or most of everything you've learned in Python within your template, within your Ginger 2 template, and then run the playbook against YAML. It might, if you've never come across any of these kind of terms or languages before, it might seem a little bit daunting, but we'll take a look at these in more detail later on. And then there's also best practices, which is available on the Ansible website as well. The link's there at the bottom of the screen. As I say, there's probably, from what I'm going to show you today, this is the things that I've learned so far and the way to do it. By no means is this probably the best way in terms of coding. I'm not an expert with Python, so it's still a learning process for me, but as I said earlier, I've learned enough to be able to generate what I need to do that enables me to do my job more efficiently, and it works. So the reason I'm wanting to show you guys today. So do check out those documents and hopefully you find them useful. So what I've done here is I've created a use case, and we'll just quickly read this use case and I'll explain kind of the idea behind this. So the use case is you have been assigned a greenfield project, and a greenfield project is a new deployment, not being deployed before, everything's totally brand new, and you are responsible for the initial configurations across company Synapse entire estate. So yeah, my blog has taken off and it's doing wonders, and it's got that big. I'm actually as big as Microsoft now. So yeah, we're expanding, and yeah, we've got some new sites. So to meet company Synapse design requirements, they have decided to purchase the following. So we're going to purchase 20 Cisco ASA firewalls. We're going to purchase 15 Cisco iOS routers, and we're going to purchase 10 Cisco iOS switches. And you will be working against a tight deadline, and you are required to have the initial configurations completed within 2 weeks. So if we just take a look at this use case, we can see that we've got 45 devices that need to be configured within 2 weeks. Now, you might be asking, well, what's this got to do with Ansible or automation or what we're talking about today? Well, this is an actual, I mean, it is obviously a use case that I've come up with, but you know, this is something that you are more likely to see in your working when you're working on projects, etc. It's, you know, it's definitely something that I've seen, and it's definitely something that I'm actually working on, you know, similar stuff at the moment. And when deadlines are tight, you need to find ways to be more efficient and be able to deliver before the deadline. So how do you do this? Well, you know, we're talking about automation, we're talking about Ansible, and you know, this is a perfect way to be able to streamline and make you more efficient in delivering these configurations within the 2 weeks deadline. So this is our use case, and this is kind of what we're going to be working off from today. And believe me, it is something that you'll run into within, you know, not necessarily that setup, but you know, it's something you'll run into whereby you need to be able to create configurations or something similar within you know, such a tight deadline as well. So this is what we're gonna work against. So bear that in mind, and we'll keep flicking back to this. I'll just pause before we go to the next slide, see if there's any questions, and if not, we'll jump into the lab. I'll just quickly repost my link on Twitter as well, so just bear with me a minute. Okay, cool. So I've posted that link now. We will continue. Okay. So like I say, bear this in mind. This is kind of the basis of what we're going to be working off today. I'm not going to focus on every single device, but I'm going to show you how we can achieve this within 2 weeks or even less and still have enough time spare. So it's lab time. So we'll flick over to our Ubuntu machine, and what we'll do is we'll just run through the, if you remember, the configuration steps here to actually get Ansible up and running on your machine. We'll just run through these, and so you guys are familiar with how to do it if you are following along. So let's move across to Ansible at Ubuntu machine rather, and what we'll do is we'll open up a terminal And so you can either start with as per my presentation, which I will share after as well, so don't worry about that. You know, we can upgrade the host. You know, you might have a machine that's been running quite a while and you've not upgraded it, so we can start with actually doing that. So on the Ubuntu machine, we'll do sudo apt upgrade. Now, as I say, my machine's probably up to date, so these probably aren't going to be relevant, but we can check. And as you can see, nothing new to upgrade. So we can also run sudo apt update, see if there's any new updates. And depending on when you last updated, there may be some, there may not be. Shouldn't take too long normally if you keep your systems up to date. Let me just actually make this a little bit bigger just to make sure that you guys can see this. Let's see if I can zoom in on that. Hopefully, I don't know if you can. Just let me know on chat if you guys can see that fine, or you want me to zoom in a little bit more. I'll try and zoom in. There we go. I can make the preferences hopefully bigger in here. Initial terminal size. I've never really done it in here, so I'm not too. You'll have to bear with me until I find out what it is. There we go. This might help. There we go. I'm sure that's more than big enough now. There we go. I'm sure you can see that. So back to what we was doing. Once we have done the necessary OS upgrades and updates, etc., we need to install Python, and then we'll install Ansible. So to do that, we shall, let me just get back on my screen there. So we'll do sudo apt, and you know, bear in mind this will depend on what operating system you're running. Sudo apt install apt-get install Python pip Python /dev build essential, and this is already installed for me, so again there's not new to install there because it's installed. But if you've not got it installed, then you can use that command and install it. Then once you've done that, you can upgrade pip. So it's the sudo pip install -- upgrade pip. And again, I don't think there should be anything to upgrade. Yeah, maybe it makes sense for me to move to the root user, so sudo su, and I'll just run that again just to kind of show you. Sudo pip install -- upgrade pip. Yeah, so it says there, as you can see, requirement is already up to date. So again, not new to install there, but I'm just running through these commands so that you can, you know, follow along and see what's supposed to happen. So then we'll do sudo pip install Ansible, and you've probably guessed it, it's going to install Ansible. So again, it's already the requirements already satisfied, so we don't need to install it on my system there. And once you've done that, once you've installed Python and you've installed Ansible, we can check the versions that have been installed by simply doing Ansible -- version. And just here we can see the version of Ansible that's installed. Okay, and by default Ansible is, or it should be, the path it should use is etc/Ansible. That's where the by default it runs, so bear that in mind. I mean, you don't have to run it from there. You can specify your own path and where you run your files from. We'll take a look at that after. And again, to have a look at the Python version, do Python -- version, and we can see that the current version of Python is 2.7.1.2. So that's that done. So on the, let me just get the presentation back up. We can see that optional upgrade. You can upgrade Ansible if you wish, depending on which version's been installed. So you can do that. Feel free to do that if you want. Again, mine's up to date, so I'm not going to go ahead and show you that command. I will share this presentation after with these commands. And then we'll move on to generating the RSA key pair. As I say, this is required if you've got GitHub and you want to do some sort of file management with GitHub, or pull, push, clone files from GitHub. So bear that in mind. Other than that, we can use the key pairs or the public key to SSH to devices and generate the configuration straight from there. So yeah, now we'll move on to generating the key pair as we've got there. And to do this, we first start by making a directory where the key is going to be stored. So I'm not going to do this because I've already done this, but I'll type the commands out. So it's mkdir, so make directory space /.ssh, and what that'll do is it'll make that directory. And in fact, there's a little mistake there, because what I need to do is add my little squiggly line there. So that's the command you would use. And once you've done that, you change the mode, the permissions. So anybody, they're changing the mode. So we flick back to the presentation. So you've got chmod 700. So basically what this is doing is it's changing the access of this particular entry here, that the directory that we've created. So anybody that's not you basically cannot access this directory. So again, I've already done this, so I'm not going to do that, but we can type the commands out. So it would be chmod 700 / and again squiggle line, forgot to put that in the presentation, .ssh for the directory. And you go ahead and press enter on that, and then once you've done that, we then verify, we don't verify, we generate the SSH keys. So by default, the RSA keys that will be generated are 2048. You can change that if you wish, but we'll stick with the normal size or the default size. So SSH qgen t RSA, and you just go ahead and press enter on this, and ask you where to store it. It'd pick up that directory that you created, and you just press enter and go through that. So once you've done that, and if you are using GitHub or you're looking to SSH directly to devices and run your playbooks, you need to be able to get your public key. So to do that, we would basically just cat to, where's that? There we go. I believe, is that where it is? No, it's not. Can't remember where it started now on my computer. But yeah, what you would do is you just, let's see if I can find out where it started. I can't remember where my public key started, but I'll show you it. Should be stored in the same place. Just have a look at that. Yeah, so in fact it should be cat be id underscore rsa.pub, and that's my public key there. So you could, I mean, this is a lab machine as well, so, but yeah, that's the key. That's how you find your public key, using that command there. So it's useful to remember that. So once we have done that, we are just about ready to start with the lab. But just before we do that, what we'd do is we'd change directory and just do ls, and I'm going to create, so you need to create your directory of where your files are going to be. So to do that, I'm going to do change directory etc Ansible, which I've created, and ls, and I've already got my demo files here, which I'm going to use today for the demonstration. What I'll do is, let me just have a look in demo. Okay, so not in there. So I can remove the, so if I just do it ls again. So this directory here, demo, is what I have pulled from my GitHub. So that's my GitHub repository. This directory is local to this device, and these are my normal files. So I'm just going to go ahead and remove the remote repository. Again, if you are getting set up with GitHub, there may be a few additional configurations that you need to do with GitHub. However, I'm not the purpose to kind of cover that today. I'm just simply using it just to make things easier, pulling files. So if we go back to our presentation, we talked about inventory, playbook, and templating. These things are going to hopefully make more sense to you now. And then I presented you with this use case. So basically we've got 45 devices and we've got 2 weeks or less to have all the initial configurations done. So it's more than likely that, you know, you're using the same OS versions, so the syntax hopefully won't be too different, or if different at all. So the good thing is that you can easily automate this. So how do we do that? And what do the inventory, playbook, and templating look like? I'll first show you what these three look like, and then we'll talk about and discuss more. So this is a text editor that I'm using. I'm just gonna go ahead and make this bigger for you to see. There we go. Hopefully that's a lot bigger. And this is what you're looking at here. May look familiar to some, may not look familiar to others. But we've got what here? We've got 127 lines for now, and this is an output from an ASA. So if you remember our use cases, we've got 20 ASAs, and our output here is from one ASA. So obviously the IP addresses are going to be different, the security levels might be different, VLANs might be different, what else might be different? So yeah, your object networks might be different, your access list might be different. You know, you got some failover stuff there. You know, some devices might not be using failover. You know, we've got AAA configuration here, and all these configurations are, you know, from a lab of mine. So it is, you know, real configuration that's, you know, from an ASA. So that's our generic file that we're going to use today. So what does the playbook look like? Well, what you're looking at there is quite simply a playbook. So I'm not going to kind of give you the 101 on, you know, what playbooks are, how they're structured, etc. The purpose of today is to show you how you can leverage Ansible to actually, you know, generate configurations, etc. If you want to learn more about Ansible and how things are structured, how languages are structured, etc., you know, I take a look at Ansible's website, or, you know, there's a lot of other websites on that online as well that you can take a look at. But yeah, this is a playbook. I mean, you know, you can have longer playbooks, but this is quite a simple playbook that we're going to be using today, one that I've created. And I thought it'd be best that I created these templates before I actually did this video, because it can be quite time consuming, and I didn't just want you guys sat there watching me type out a lot, you know, lots of text. So I did create these beforehand. So if we take a look at our playbook, a playbook is something that we run against the templates to actually do what we want it to do. So your host, this, you know, we're using localhost, which is this actual machine that we use in the Ubuntu machine. That's where it's going to output it to, but you can change that. Connection is local. Gather facts, can't remember what that is off the top of my head actually, but yeah, that's false anyway. And then we're going to take a look at our vars files, our variable files, after this playbook. But you need to specify where this playbook is going to go for the variables that is running. You know, on the template, you need to specify that. So in my case, as I showed you, we're actually in where is it? We're actually in /etc/Ansible. So if we flip back to this, we can see that our file is going to be in /etc/Ansible, and our file name is going to be demovars.yml, which is YAML. So that's the vars file that we're going to be using. So once it knows, you know, where it's running this against and the variable file that it's going to be using, we then need to give the playbook some tasks. We need to tell it what to do. So again, this playbook is structured in a way that YAML needs to be presented, the way that the playbook needs to be presented, you know, with the correct spacing, etc. Do look that up so you kind of get an idea of, you know, how to do it. So we have two tasks here. So what we're going to do is we are going to give it a name. So this is, you can have any name that you want. Again, make sure that this is structured correctly. Normally it's 2 spacings, so if you look, if I could select that, in fact you can see hopefully two dots there, 2 spacings between, then again 2 between that, 1 between the name. So we'll give it a name, and in my example, this name for this particular task, so this is task, all this here is task 1, and all this here is task 2. So in task 1, we're going to create Synack main site configurations. So if we flick back to our presentation quickly, we can see that hopefully, yeah, so across Synack's entire estate, so basically we've got 2, let's say we've got a main site and we've got a branch that we're looking at. So this is going to create the main site configurations, and this is going to create the branch site configurations in our example. So once you've given it a name, you know what, it's more of a reference for yourself, so you know what this particular task is doing. Then you need to specify the source of the template that it's going to use. So we'll look at the template after. And in my example, again, our source equals /etc/Ansible. So these are directories that it's going to be in, and then this is the template's name. And as I mentioned earlier before, the template's written in Ginger 2. And if we scroll across a little bit, we need to also specify the destination of these. So once this task has run, where do we want the output to be delivered to, if you like? So in my case, the destination is going to be the same directory, so etc Ansible. And if you recall, if we flip back to Ubuntu, up here I created a local directory there called local configs. So this is where I want my configuration to be output once that task has been run. So that's what that's going to do. It's going to output it to this directory, local configs, and then we've got something here. Let me just scroll across a little bit. That says item.key.cfg. Well, a CFG is the file output that it's going to be output to, so it's a .cfg file. And then item key will become more apparent soon, and I'll show you why. And then on the last line of the first task, we've got something called with dict, and that's with dictionary. So again, this will become more apparent in the vars file, which I'll show you shortly. But this is basically referencing a place within the vars file to look for. Okay, I hope that makes sense. If you're still kind of a little bit baffled with that, either just comment on a live chat or reach out to me after if you're watching the recording, or again, like I said, look on Ansible's website. So it's the same again with the second task. It's doing exactly the same thing. The only difference is at the end here, well, the only 2 differences is we're using a different dictionary for the second task, because we're looking at branch site configurations, and again, this should hopefully make more sense when we look at the other files. And then we've still got the same item key, so it's going to reference an item key, so it's going to give it an item key name based on the item key, and I'll show you what an item key is after. And then I've added a little additional bit here, _branch, to kind of specify that these outputs are, for the branch configurations, because if not, it's going to output the same configs, and it's not going to really make that much sense. So that's a simple playbook there, what you're looking at. And if we look at then moving on to the demo vars, So if we look at our variables file, we have this here. So this is my variables file that I've created. Again, you probably can see why I created this before doing this video, because it's a lot of typing and I didn't want you guys just kind of watching a video with me typing lots of stuff. So again, there's a specific structure to, you know, YAML and the way that it needs to be presented, and this is the structure here, and this is the dictionary. This is the dictionary that I was talking about on the playbook. So this little breakdown, what you see here, is a dictionary. So if we flip back to our playbook, we can see that for the main site configurations, we're going to reference main.asa dictionary. So if we go back to our thingy, our vars file, we can see that we're referencing main and then asa. Then you can see this is structured in a specific way. So main comes first, and further down we've got branch as well. So we've got a dictionary main.asa, and we've got another dictionary branch asa. So if we look at our playbook, these specific areas are going to be referenced or looked at in the vars file when this playbook is run. So that's how it works, and hopefully it makes more sense. And the item key, well, basically the item key is, so when the playbook's run and it outputs the necessary files, like I said, it's going to send it to our directory etc Ansible, and it's going to send it to the directory local configs. Then it needs to still give it a name. So what name does it give it? Well, it's going to give it the item key name for the main branch, and for the second branch, it's going to give it the item key name plus underscore branch.cfg. So I'll show you what that is. So the item key is basically this and this and so on. ASA 10, ASA 11, ASA 12. So this is the way that I've done it. I mean, as I said earlier on in the video, this is my vars file. You know, people can structure them different ways with different variables. It's totally up to you. This is the way that I've done it for this demonstration. And yeah, so that's hopefully made more sense to you guys in terms of how a playbook actually gets the information that it needs, and you know how the variables file works. So that's the variable files, and this is kind of everything we're going to be using, and we can add more to this kind of just to give you a better idea later on when we actually generate the configuration output. But for now, we'll look at the template. So if you remember earlier, we've got the original ASA output here that I've taken from a lab device. And if you flick back again, just as a recap, you flick back to our use case, you can see that, well, we've got 20 Cisco ASAs. As we said, the IP addresses are probably going to be different. You know, some interfaces might be different. You know, there might be some configuration on one but not on the other. So what we could do is we can use this shell configuration, if you like, and make changes to it and automate the process, so we're not going through 20 ASAs doing the same thing 20 times, because you know that's depending on what configuration you need to input on every single device. That can take a lot of time, and as our presentation says, we have a 2-week deadline to do this, and we've not only got 20 ASAs to do, we've got 15 Cisco iOS routers, we've got 10 iOS switches as well. So you know, that can be quite a big task, and you know, it can be quite long-winded and boring. So we need a way to automate this, and this is what we're going to do in our use case today. We're going to automate our ASA configuration. So I took the original template, or the original Cisco ASA output here. I just copied it into, so scroll down, ignore the first bit. And again, I just scrolled it into a separate document here that you can see here. So it's all the same thing, but I've started working on making changes. So this is using Ginger 2. As I said, the template is written in Ginger 2, and it's outputting. You can use Python within the template as well. So this is what I'm doing as well. So there's probably better ways and different ways to actually use Python. However, this is the way that I'm currently using. It works for me, and I'm no expert with Python yet. I'm still learning it. So, but this is good enough. It works for me so far, and it gets the job done. So, feel free to use the same method, or if you're more familiar with Python, do what works for you. If you're using loops, etc. But in this particular demonstration, I won't be using loops. So if we look at the top here, and we just flick, let's just flick to. No, we'll stay on this one that I've started editing. So this is our template. This is what our template's going to be. This is how we're going to generate our ASA configurations for all 20 of our ASAs, and it's going to be done in less than a minute. The one thing that I've found with automating, especially writing templates, etc. like this, is that the bulk of the work goes into actually creating the template and the variables and the rest of the files. Once you've done that and you've got it right, the rest of it's easy. So that's the good thing. And like I say, you can generate configurations in less than a minute. So if we look at this, we can see I'm saying here, if ASA1, so what does that mean? Well, I'll read the first line out. So if ASA1 in item value name, then it's gonna output this hostname ASA1. So if we go back to our vars file, and we'll say if ASA1, so what's ASA1? Let's have a look. Well, ASA1, so it's not that, because we've got a dash there. So it's, there we go. So it's ASA1, that's the name there. So this is our dictionary, and we've got the item value key, and then we've got everything inside it. So we've got ASA1. So if ASA1 in item value name, so the item value is these, so the reds are the item value. So if ASA1's in the item value name, then what it's going to do is it's going to print hostname ASA1. So that gives the ASA an hostname. So again, imagine what I've done here is I've done I think, let me just check, I've done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 ASAs. So I've not done all 20. I've done 6 just to kind of demonstrate the process of how it works. So then we can go on and say, well, unless so if it's ASA1, it's going to print that, or else if it's ASA2, then it's going to print ASA2. If it's ASA3, and so on. Hopefully you understand kind of how that works. No doubt you will if you understand Python. So it's going to keep going through that until we've done what it needs to do, and then we're going to end that. We're going to end that if. And then we'll go on to the next one. So we're going to start looking at the interfaces now. So if we go down to on our untouched version, so DMZ, there we go. So this is our untouched version. That's basically what it looks like there. And if we go to our template, we can see that we've still got, so we're still going to want on every single device, we're going to want interface gigabit 00, and it's going to be called DMZ. Again, if that wasn't the case, we could put in the necessary steps to change that. And security level is going to be 50. but we want to change the IP address for every single device, because you know obviously the all 20 devices are not going to have the same IP address. So how do we do that? Well, again, we take the same methodology, but we change the IP address by inputting variables like this. So we see that for ASA1 we're going to use variable ASA1DMZ IP for that IP address, and we can even do the same with the subnet mask, and then subnet mask is going to be subnet 22. If we look at our vars file, we can see that ASA1 in IP, ASA1 out IP, and we're going to use ASA1 DMZ IP. So it should output 10.1.1.1 in this, and it's going to use subnet 22. Well, subnet 22 is here, so subnet 22, and that's what it's going to reference. So it's going to output 255.255.0.0. And again, you do that for every single device, and then you end that if statement. And you know, I've kind of followed the same process going through the interfaces here. And what we could do is we could actually, that's the part that I got up to there. And what we could do is we can actually test this now and run a playbook and see if it works. So what we'll do is we'll kind of put it into practice a little bit, and we'll make some changes live here, and we'll see what we get as an output. So before I do that, what I wanted to do is I'll just show you, hopefully I can show you the output from the first bit that we've done up to interface gigabit 06. So outside should have different IP addresses for each file, and again DMZ should have different IP addresses, and there should also be different host names for each device so far. So let's take a look, let's see if it is. And what we'll do is we'll run a playbook against the template that we have and the variable file. So we'll do Ansible playbook, and that's how you run a playbook. And we need to run the playbook, what did I call it? So I called it demo pb.yaml, so I'll copy that, paste, and as I said, it's going to look for the source files, and it's going to output the it's going to output the files into our local configs. So you just press enter, and it should run this playbook then. So as you can see, it's starting, and you can see that our first task is create Synapse main site configurations, and it's all going green because these are already, nothing's changed, and the output files are already in the local configs. But if they weren't there, it'd create them. So what it's done is it's said, okay, everything's fine, that's created them, and we can see the name for our task that we created. And we can see our second task, which is create Synapse branch site configurations, and we can see it's output them to the local host, and it's all been okay. Nothing failed, nothing's changed, nothing's unreachable. So if things do change as you change your template or your variables, it'll go orange, and it'll tell you that, you know, how many that have changed. It'll tell you, which is, I think, is quite cool. So if we change directory to local configs now, we'll do ls, we can see that it's give our files the item key name, which is ASA10, and the underscore for the branch ones that we left on the playbook. And for our main sites, it's just give them the item key, and that's it. So if we look at ASA1 as an example, so I'll just cut ASA1.cfg. We can see that it's given us the output of the configuration, of the ASA configuration, and if you remember, nothing's changed on the lower half of the configuration. The only thing that should have changed is the DMZ and the outside. So we can see that it's given an IP of 209.165.100.1 for the outside. So if we flick back to our editor and we look at the outside, which is here, we can see that if ASA1 in item value name, give it the IP address of ASA1 out IP address. So this is going to reference the var. So we look at the vars, ASA1 out IP, and it's going to give the IP address of 209.165.100.1. So if we fly back over to Ubuntu, we can see that that is indeed correct. It's give it the IP address. So even though the template has all this funky stuff going on and it looks all confusing, etc., once you run the playbook, it gets rid of all that and keeps the necessary information for every individual file. So this is how it works for each one. So if we then look at hostname, so again it's give it hostname ASA1. So if we flick back to our template and we scroll up, we can see that if it's ASA1 in item value name, we're going to give hostname ASA1, and that's indeed what it's done, as we've just verified. And last but not least, if we quickly look at DMZ, so if ASA1 in item value, give it ASA1 DMZ IP. So if we quickly check our vars file and we look at ASA1 DMZ IP, we can see it's 10.1.1.1. If we flip back to our Ubuntu machine and we look at DMZ, we can see that it's indeed give it the right IP address, 10.1.1.1.1. And it's also give it the correct subnet mask, which is quite cool. So, you know, you can, hopefully you're beginning to see how once you've developed your template, how easily you can generate and modify configurations and actually save yourself the heartache of having to manually develop configuration files for, you know, 20 Cisco ASA firewalls, 15 Cisco iOS routers, 10 Cisco iOS switches, and, you know, more. So you can see how this using Ansible can save you a lot of time. So what we'll do is we'll just quickly change directory and we'll go through making some changes on the template, and then we'll run the playbook again and we'll see what changes have occurred. So if we flick back to this, so our vars file can stay how it is, we don't need to change anything yet. And we go to our template and everything from this point on is untouched. So what we can do now is we can make some changes here. So we can say, okay, well, in our example we're using 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 ASAs we're using. So in our example we can say, well, 3 ASAs have management IPs and 3 ASAs don't have management IPs, just for whatever reason. So to do that, we know that all management interface, the management 00 is going to be used, but we need to change some values. So we can get rid of that for starters because it's going to be no shut. So we can add that there, and then we could do. We'll keep that in fact because we could do that, and then we can add IP address because we said 3 are going to have IP addresses and 3 won't have IP addresses. So we could do we'll do no shut on name, and we'll give it a name if, so we could do start by doing that, and we'll do if we'll say, so we've got ASA 1, 2, 3, 10, 11, 12. So we'll do ASA 1, 2, and 3, they're going to have a management IP address, and ASA 10.11.12 won't have an IP address. So we'll do if ASA1 in item.value, we'll give it and the value we're going to be matched against his name, like that. Just make sure that's right. Then we'll give it name if, so we'll give it so we could even call it let's do this, ASA1 MGMT description. So what this is saying, we can make a variable now for this, so I'll show you how to make variables. So it's saying if the device is ASA1, then it's going to give it an interface name of whatever we define in this variable. So we'll define the variable now. So I'll just copy that because I'll probably forget it. So we'll just come down here. So that's going to be, so we'll call it ASA1 MGMT. So that's what we'll call it. And then we can do the same for the other 3 ASAs. So we'll give that a variable of that and 3, and then we'll do ASA MG and we'll do ASA1 MGMT, ASA2 MGMT, and ASA3 MGMT. Okay, so that's our variables now defined in there. I'm going to need to actually save that because, in fact, I can generate. I'll use Git, in fact, to pull these configurations. So that's going to define the variable there. So it's going to be, I'll give it a name interface of ASA1 MGMT. And then we'll do the same for the, I'll just copy this to make it quicker because we'll use the same concept. So we'll say, or else if it's ASA2, then we can do name if, and I'll copy that. Again, there's a lot of copy and pasting in the templates, which makes your life a little bit easier. And we can use ASA2 MGMT G description, or else if it's ASA3, then we can use the variable ASA3 management description, and then we'll end that. So we'll end that there. So I'll just copy that. We'll end that. So this is basically telling us now that the configuration is going to output interface management 00. It's going to no shut the interface, and for each one of these ASAs, it's going to give us different names for that interface as per defined in our variables that we've listed down here. So that's that. And what we could do is we can change the security level as well, in fact. So what we can do is we could do again, I'm just using simple ifs and elif statements. There's obviously other ways you can do that using Python, etc. This is the way that I'm using it at the minute. So we said that the first 3 ASAs, they're gonna be active with IP addresses, and then the second, the last three ASAs, ASA 10, 11, 12, they're not going to have IP addresses. So they're not going to have IP addresses, they don't need security levels. So we'll do, we might as well do the following. So if ASA 10, 11, 12, so 10, then it's not going to have a security level. Neither is 11, and neither is 12. It's not going to have an IP address either, and that's going to be, let me just take a look at this. So we can remove this here because this is going to no shut all interfaces. We don't really want that, so we can do shut here. Move that forward if you want. So we can shut that, so it's going to do that for those devices, and then we can end that like that. But then if it is ASA123, then we need a security level and we need an IP address. So we can do let me just write this out. So we could do security level, management, we'll give it 100. So again, let's make this a little bit easier by copy and pasting. So we'll say if ASA1, then we're going to give it security level of 100, and so wait a minute, I need to just verify that a minute. Let me just make sure that's right. So yeah, there's probably an easier way that you could do this with actually looping. So what I could do, so this is going to need to be if it's a 10, so we could put that in there. So you could probably loop this, but I'm not going to waste the time on this live session and do that. So yeah, we could have it like that, and again we should put the shutdown commands in there, and then we can say yep, so we can say if ASA1, and we'll give it an IP address. Let me just see if I've got it in my vars file. So what we could do is we can create a management IP for these ASAs. So we're only doing it for ASA123. So we could give it ASA1 MGMT IP, and we can give it let's give it 172.16.1.1, and again we'll copy and paste this for ASA2, and we'll give it 2.1 and change that variable, and we'll do it for ASA3, and we'll change that to 3.1. So that's going to reference our variable file, and what we can do then is we'll take that and we'll copy that into here. So So it's going to output that for the variable file. And we can use, we've got subnet, yeah, so we can use subnet 24 from our vars file. Like that. And we can take this same statement again, and we could say, or if it's ASA2, and we still want it to have the same security level but different IP address. So again, you do that by referencing the variable file, and we're only changing the subnet's going to say the same, different IP address though. And then we'll do the same again for ASA3. And again, we'll just change that bit there. And then we'll end that. So we'll do, let's just make a space there to make it a little bit more visible. We'll do end if there. So we can see, yeah, it looks a little bit, you know, like I say, for this you probably could use a loop to make it easier and less messier or noisy, but you know, for this live demonstration I'm not gonna do that, just keep things quick. And what we've done here is we've basically said for the management interface for the first 3 ASAs we're going to give them a description, but then for the second 3 ASAs they're going to be shut down and they're not going to have an IP address or security level. And then for the first 3 ASAs again, we're going to give them a security level and IP address. And we also need to make sure that they're not shut down. So we'll just do that on each one. Like that, and that should be fine. Space don't really matter. And yeah, so we've basically just made changes there to the management interfaces of 6 ASAs, and it's going to take under less than a minute to actually generate that output. So what I'll do now is I'll save these configurations, and I'm going to have to quickly put them into my GitHub, so just bear with me while I quickly do that, and then I can pull the files off of GitHub. I'll show you how to do that, and then we can run the playbook and see if we can see the differences in the configuration. So what I'll do is I'll just change, so we've changed the template, so in fact I can just copy, I'll just make the revisions quickly on here, so I'll just copy all this config from the template and paste it in there. Let me commit that change to my GitHub. You can't see this, by the way, I haven't got this screen set up, I'm just quickly doing it. And again, I'll do the same with my vars file. And I'll just update that on GitHub as well. And what we'll do then, as I say, we'll run the playbook and we'll see the changes that have been made. So that's done now on GitHub. So if I flick back to the presentation and we just have a quick recap. So as I say, we're only using 6 or generating configs for 6 ASAs, but hopefully you can see how easy it is once you've created your template and your necessary vars files, etc., how easy it is to actually generate output for all these devices and save so much time. So we've got to our Ubuntu machine. I'll just do ls, and I need to remove the template and the vars file because I've just updated it with the changes that we've made on GitHub. I'll just remove that, and I'll also remove the vars, in fact, and I'll leave the other configurations, the previous configurations, in our local configuration file, because then we should be able to see that once the playbook's run, there's changes that are being made. So do ls now, we can see that those configs are gone. We've only got the playbook there. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to clone my GitHub directory. Let me just get the path. Is that the path? No. Let me just if I do quick little pyro certify git clone, just make it a lot easier, quicker. This is just some history I've got. Yeah, so if I just do git clone, so I'm going to clone a directory, and there we go. It's asking for my public key password, and it's cloned that directory from my GitHub account now. So if I do ls now, we can see we've got another directory called demo that's been cloned from my GitHub account. So if I change directory into demo and ls, we can see our files in there. So I need to move the Ginger2 template, which is our template file, to etc/Ansible, and I also need to move our demo vars.yaml. I'll just copy that. And quickly paste that. And change directory. And now we can see that these files are now in there. So now we're going to run. So if I just do a cat, in fact, just to show you that them changes are actually in the vars file. So we can see that we added these ASA1 IP, management IP, ASA2 management IP, ASA3 management IP. That's our vars file, and if we have a look at our template, and I do cat, and we quickly scroll up, we can see here all the changes that we made to the management interface. So now we're going to run the playbook and see if these changes take effect. So to do that, we do Ansible -playbook, and then we do the playbook name, which is was it demo.playbook? I'll just up arrow, in fact it'll be quicker. Give it demo.playbook on it. Yeah. So if we run that, let's see what happens. So it's saying that demo vars YAML was not found. Now the reason for that is because I've saved the YAML file under actual YAML YAML rather than YML. So do bear that in mind. So what I'll do is I'll just edit that file quickly. .yml. No, it's .yaml. I'll just pretend I'm making, and I'll make that change, and I'll save it as YML. Yes. So if I ls, we can actually remove, up arrow remove this one, so we don't get confused, and we'll run the playbook again. You can see it's gone like a yellowy orange this time, and that's the reason being is because it's actually made changes to our original files that we've got in the local configs. So hopefully it's made the right changes. We can go ahead and have a look now. So we'll do change directory, local configs, ls, and let's start by taking a, so if you remember, we added management interface IPs for ASA 1, 2 and 3, but for 10, 11, 12 we didn't. So we'll first take a look at ASA 1 just to verify. Let's scroll up, and as you can see here, interface management 001 00, sorry, it's give it name if ASA1 management, which is what we wanted, and it's also give it an IP address, and it's no shut as well. So that's excellent. Now what if we have a look at one of the ASAs that we didn't want to give an IP address? So if we do cat, I'll just copy ASA 10, and we scroll up, we can see that it's not got a security level, no IP address, and it's shut down. So what we've done there is we've actually achieved what we've wanted to achieve, and that is by automating the configuration for 6 ASAs in under well, it's taken under less than a minute to, or less than a few seconds actually, to generate the configuration output. But you can see that from the templating that we did, it's not taken that long to actually make the changes on the template that we wanted. So you can see there, if we go back to our use case, you know, we've just automated 6 ASA configuration files in, you know, a short space of time, not even, you know, a day. You've got 2 weeks to complete this, and we've done 6 ASAs in, you know, not even a day. If we wanted to, we could, you know, add more variables and, you know, have it for the full 20 ASAs, and we could have separate VARS file for the 15 iOS routers and also a separate file for the 10 iOS switches. And you can see there how easy it is once you understand the languages and what's going on, how easy it can be to actually automate configurations and save yourself a lot of time. So that's pretty much it from what I wanted to show you guys, and I hope that I've been able to show you guys something new today in terms of, you know, templating using Ansible and actually generating configuration outputs. I will share the presentation on my blog, so look out for that if you want in the configuration files, and I will also share I'll look at sharing these Ansible files as well, so that you guys can, you know, replicate this and play about with, etc. I'll just see if there's any questions and give you guys a minute to ask any questions before I end this recording, but I hope you guys have really found that useful. I've enjoyed showing you guys this today. Let me just get that chat back on there. And there we go. So, tech tips, thanks for tuning in again. I hope you've enjoyed the session today. Watch it back if you've not, you know, managed to catch it all, but I hope you've understood and enjoyed it. It's not using much YAML, is it? It's like regular Cisco configuration mixed with some Ansible ifs. Yeah, well, that's it. I mean, I wanted to try and keep it as simple as possible today, because, you know, some people have never come across this before. You know, let alone different languages, etc. There is obviously a lot more you can do with, you know, Python, YAML, and the whole point of automation is to actually make everything as dynamic as possible. So if we flick back to our template, So the whole point is, I mean, I've used, you know, ifs and elifs here. You know, you can, as I said earlier, you can use stuff like loops, and you know, you can follow the Python way to do that, YAML way, whatever. You know, some of it I'm still learning as well, but I wanted to try to keep it as simple as possible with, you know, using as little as I could in terms of, you know, things like it, you know, different things like this, so that people could hopefully follow along and understand it before going off and hopefully, you know, looking at more into these different languages. And yeah, I mean, the whole point of it is, I mean, we've got a configuration file here. You know, at the end of the day, you want to try to save yourself as much time as possible, but automation, you need to try and make everything as dynamic as possible. So if you've got a template that's as dynamic as, you know, as possible, and it works, so you know, you could even make the interfaces dynamic, you could make, you know, every single line you could pretty much make dynamic, and in your variables file then you could have, you know, your variables set out however, you know, however you want and whatever works best for you. For me, I find that using dictionaries like this in YAML files works wonders. It saves a lot of time, and it's easy to kind of reference things, and you know, using the item keys, etc. So I find that works well for me. So I mean, depending on what everybody's experience is, you know, use what's best, you know, use what you know is best for you, and do what works for you. This is just a kind of simple way that I wanted to show you guys. It's, you know, very beginner level, and hopefully, you know, if you really need to mop up some configurations in a short amount of time, hopefully this kind of quick method can hopefully help you guys out. So yeah, that's kind of the whole point. But yeah, thanks for your question, Tech Tips. I'm glad you found it informative. I've enjoyed doing it. As I say, I'm still kind of learning it as well, but you know, I thought it'd be kind of relevant to show you guys what I've been up to, and again, like I say, how it's possible to actually automate configurations for, you know, as many devices as you want in, you know, minutes. So I'm glad you've enjoyed it, and I hope everybody else that's been watching as well. If you've got any questions after this video, feel free to drop me a line on YouTube or Twitter, or on my blog synac.co.uk, and I'll kind of reach out to you guys there. And yeah, you'll find these files, the presentation, they'll also be on my blog. So if you want to take this a step further, then jump on my blog and get the files, and you know, have a play about. But definitely moving forward, us network engineers, for the network engineers out there, consultants, etc., you know, it's very beneficial to understand and to be able to do this sort of thing moving forward in, you know, in today's world. So do bear that in mind, and maybe, you know, pick up an Ansible book or start learning some sort of automation or programming, coding, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, so if there's no more questions, guys, I'll end the live stream here. So again, thanks for watching. I hope you've enjoyed, and if you've not subscribed, then please do. And hopefully I'll be developing my next KT session soon, and catch up with you guys then. But until then, thanks for watching.